Welcome to another episode of the ConquerCast. I am super excited today to have Brian Call here. Gritty, you're back to your home turf. I mean, it was once your place. This studio is built out for you.
This is deja vu. That's my moose up there on the wall.
Is it okay that it's still here?
It's great. It's great. I don't have a place to put it.
Yeah, I've kind of wondered if we need to bring it down a little bit. It is in frame, but I think the only reason why I haven't is I think it's going to poke me in the eye. So.
Yeah. No, it's super cool. I remember, moving here and setting up this studio. We wanted the wood so that it would handle the reverberations really well. The only problem that we consistently ran into was the ducting, the heater system. And so in the summer, it got a little rough.
Oh, it was hot because we had to turn the fans off
to record.
I've had that happen a few times.
It's a little warm, pretty quick.
Yeah.
But otherwise, though, love this little space. A lot of good memories here.
Good memories, right?
Yep.
I mean, this was built out for you. We hired a guy to build all the furniture, to put tables in.
Solid.
There's a table right over there that's being used for kudu horns right now, but we need to, we need to station that. This will actually probably become my office here in a bit because that's what I'm spending most of my time doing is this. But I'm about 20 episodes in and recording, and I was looking at you're like close to 900 episodes. Yeah. And so, I'm a newbie at this, but I'm sitting across the table from the legend, especially like in this hunt space and everything. I don't know, you've got to be at the top. Like
we were one of the first, I think the Gritty Bowman podcast was in the first 3 hunting podcasts. I remember when I started, I think I saw Meat Eater had a show and Cody Rich he started a month or 2 before me or after me. I think it was after, with Rich Outdoors. There was Jay Scott, I think. There really was very little, and no one was doing it kind of my style, which I felt was a younger man kind of vibe, Yeah. And it was fun. It was like a wild ride for a few years, for sure. The show really took off. So being first to market was a big part of why I think I succeeded. I'm actually surprised today because, podcast hasn't been for a long time, my focus. It hasn't been where my interests are.
Okay.
My interests have been far more into film, hunting,
storytelling, right? You are a master storyteller. In fact, we were just sitting outside the office before coming in here. We just got done doing a workout.
Yeah.
A lot of the team members wanted to come join, and Brian Call was in the office. It's been a while since we've done a workout the type thing. So, I mean, you notice all these guys were hanging on every word that you were sharing. I mean, you've been an example and someone that people aspire to hunt like, to be like, but you're out there telling your stories and everyone's hanging on every word because you've just mastered that. And I don't think it's something that you've had to master. I think it just comes naturally to you. Ever since I've known you for, the last 10 years, you are a master storyteller.
In that setting too, I don't mind telling my own story.
Yeah.
But I'm actually pretty uncomfortable telling my own story on film.
Interesting.
I like filming guys like Brad Hunt or Ryan Lampers, or I like telling other people's stories a little more than my own. But my wife and kids, they're like, Brian, Dad, we want to see you.
Yeah.
So I've tried, that latest film, The Struggle, that was a personal hunt, and a tag I had applied for nearly 20 years for. And it was a special, it was kind of a go for the gold.
Yeah.
And just this time it worked.
Yeah.
And I got what I feel like is, for me, just a great bull on a great hunt, and the struggle was real, and that's what it was all about. And I feel like that's really where I love to indulge, and where I get to engage in the most creative part of me is kind of capturing these stories and trying to bring them to people in a way that moves them or makes them think or entertains or makes them laugh or gets them kind of on the edge of their seats, whatever, all the things that encompass a great story. That's where my passion is.
Yeah.
So the podcast has not been a main focus for quite a while.
You're still recording and releasing episodes on what kind of like regular cadence?
what I wanted was for Brad Hunt to kind of take over a lot of the production time for that. He did pretty good. There's fewer shows than we normally have in the past.
He's like twice a month or something.
Twice a week.
Twice a week right now.
Mm-hmm. That's how it was for 8 years. Is twice a week.
Twice a week.
But now this year it's half that.
Okay.
So in 2025 we have new goals, and I want to stretch the podcast. I feel like the film front, I know what I want to do. I have a whole bunch of stories I'm working on right now. Great films. I'm excited to bring those, but I have a passion for the podcast space too.
Yeah.
I have a new podcast I'm going to launch soon, plus the old standby Gritty. Yeah. But I feel like there's a lot of room for growth, but I'm still surprised. I got to tell you, the other day, a bunch of people were posting, what's your top 5 hunting podcasts? And I just saw Gritty up there, like across the board. I'm like, we're still relevant. People still listen to that podcast.
That was a trend a few weeks ago, everyone posting their top 5. And I noticed that as well. You were up there all the time on everyone's posts. So.
Which surprised me because I saw the circles I was in. I was like, I don't put as much work into, and I'm like, well, is it just because of the old stuff I did, or is it new stuff I'm doing, when it comes to the podcast? So I think there's a lot of room. I don't want to waste anybody's time. If you sit down and you listen to a Gritty podcast episode, I want it to be at a certain level.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like, I think that I've gone through phases where you're just getting something recorded and out the door and hoping people find value. And I'm much more strategic now than I've been in the past. So I have shows I want to record, and I have stories I want to tell on the Gritty podcasts, and things I think are useful and meaningful, educational I want to hit. And I think that it's going to do well in 2025.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we were just talking, and it's, your goal is to drive home impactful, inspirational, maybe fewer numbers, but ones that like leave people wanting more, right? And you've got the whole recipe to do that. You do that already. So let's dive into that a little bit. This podcast is all about conquering in life, but let's dive into that hunt, and then we'll kind of go backwards. I thought I was going to dive into maybe your foundation, childhood, and all that, and what caused you to be this gritty individual who's been resilient through a lot in life, because you have. And it takes a lot of that to do what you've done in the industry with your occupation and your business that you've built. But then when you're out on the mountain, you're out putting in time and doing things that a lot of hunters aren't. And it's gritty and it's conquering. There's mountains you're conquering through these films. So if you're not watching or following Brian Call, please do. You'll see what I'm talking about. But this last hunt that you were just sharing with our team out here, things to conquer in that hunt, things that you were going for. You mentioned the word miracles a few times. Like,
I think I named that movie The Struggle because for me it was. I know that I've hunted with some of the best hunters, legendary guys that are guides out of Canada that have been on over 200 mountain goat hunts and various elk hunts and deer, moose, and so on. And I've hunted with guys that just grew up in Montana or something and have just every year been successful for 40 years. And I hunted with Ryan Lampers and just learned so much from all these different guys that have been able to sort of mentor me along the way and teach me. I've kind of come to this place in life where I've been fortunate to be on so many hunts in the last decade since Gritty kind of kicked off.
Yeah.
I've been able to go to different parts of the world. I've been able to go to our backyard, different species. I've kind of tasted it all, right? And now I'm at this stage where what interests me is something challenging, something I haven't done or something that I know is really hard I want to do again.
Yeah.
And so I drew that archery elk tag that I've been applying for 20 years. And it's very tempting, especially in the Boulder, which is, where the hunt was. It's tempting to just hire somebody and help me just shoot a giant.
Yeah.
Some guy who has some 400-inch bull pinned down and kind of walk me to it. But over the years, I've found those aren't very rewarding experiences for me. I might have the bigger animal at the end of it, but it loses some of the feeling of success or just the taste of victory is different.
Yeah. The journey along the way may not have the same reward to it, right?
Yeah, because the truth is this, that in order for you to experience what you feel is some kind of remarkable outcome or achievement or experience, you have to do the thing.
Yeah.
You can't be like my friend Mark Livesay. You can't like run an Ironman race and be in the top whatever if you don't do the Ironman race.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you kind of have to commit to the thing and gamble it all. And I have found that, like with this elk hunt that I drew this tag on, I wanted to do it archery and I wanted to do it mostly by myself from start to finish, fumble around, scout, put up my cameras, like go into a unit. I've never been there before. Never. I didn't grow up in Utah. I don't really know the state hardly at all. I wanted to just go out and just figure it out. And I did. And then during the course of the hunt, I screwed up lots of times. And I'd figure out what's next and keep fighting and keep pushing. And I came really near to the end of the hunt and not killing an elk at all. You know, that afternoon I killed that bull. It could have gone a different way.
Yeah.
The next 2 days were real stormy. Most guys, nobody really tagged out those next 2 days. Other guys that didn't ever get a bull, they turned out to be really lousy days. I feel like it came down to the wire and I got blessed. And I feel like, you know, I worked really hard. I put in time and I have skill. It could have ended though, totally different.
Yeah.
But it didn't. I got a great bull. I got it's like a 353-inch 5x5.
It's awesome.
Which for me, with a bow, archery, all by myself in that unit was just like, and I shouldn't say all by myself. I had Brad Hunt there suffering with me, helping call, helping film and all of that. So, but I mean by myself in the sense I didn't have a team. Didn't have a whole bunch of buddies like glassing, and I didn't have guides. You know, it's just me doing it kind of old school. And no cameras are allowed in the state of Utah after July, 30th, 31 or something.
Yeah.
So I didn't use tech, game cameras, any of that kind of stuff to, you know, you're just like the old fashioned way kind of out there archery hunting and doing your best. And there were many times I could have shot a nice bull. In fact, I had a number of 350-inch 6x6 bulls.
Did you?
That I passed on. And they're great bulls. But a 350-inch 6, it's hard to describe. It's a lot different than a 350-inch 5x5.
Yeah.
There's so many inches in that 6 ton.
Oh yeah.
In mass and in length and all that it's hard. The frame and the mass on just that 5 is just the coolest. And he's just so character-wise, so cool.
Yeah.
Clean 5, you know? So he was that unicorn I was looking for. And after taking him, the swelling of like the gratitude I felt for that, because I was reconciled to, okay, you know, didn't turn out.
Not
happening. And it's funny, like finally when I got to the point where, it's possible I don't get this, you know what? That's life.
Yeah.
That's about the time it happens for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Isn't that interesting?
And I feel like God's just testing you, you know? And the thing is though, had I shot one of those earlier bulls, you know, I come home and I'd be like, got him, you know? Even in the first few days of the hunt, I didn't kill that bull bones. And even now I see him on camera, I'm like, you're an idiot. It was the first day. It was the first 30 minutes of the first day. That's why I also said in the beginning of the movie, this is a self-inflicted struggle. Like life is full of struggles. Some get thrust upon us. Some we put on ourselves. By choosing not to shoot that beautiful bull the first day, I suffered.
You chose the suffering.
I chose to like inflict a hard hunt on myself only to shoot a bull arguably as equivalent, you know?
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, man, it's not about getting the bull. It's about the journey to get it. You know, it's about the struggle. When I first started hunting with Ryan Lampers, we'd go out on these hunts and we'd see some great animals on the first 2 days. Bears, deer. And that man wouldn't pull the trigger. He wouldn't shoot the arrow. He'd just be like, eh. I'm like, dude, that is a He's like, but we got 10 days. I want to see what's around the bend.
Yeah.
And so we would pass, often shooting something not as good on the last day. And then Ryan would shoot something. It was close or nice.
Yeah.
Big mule deer buck or something. And he'd go, now it feels right. I suffered.
Wow.
I earned it. It just didn't feel right at first. Didn't feel right if I had shot the one on day one. And admittedly, 5 years ago, when he did that to me, I was like, you're an idiot. Like, I don't get it. I kind of get it, but not.
Yeah.
Now I'm just like that.
Yeah.
I'm with him 1,000%. I go, you're right. I don't want it. I don't want it if it's given to me on a platter on the first day. And I was talking to him about that when he watched the movie, and he called me up afterward and he said, Brian, that movie was just I loved it.
Yeah.
Good job. You know, what a great bull. And he said, I said, yeah, I mean, kind of you're rubbing off on me. It's pretty obvious. I should have shot that bull. And he's like, you know what that tells me though, Brian? It tells me that you are in this because you want for the adventure.
Yeah.
You're in it because you embrace the struggle. You're in it because you want an experience, not because you want a trophy. I guess, you know, what I'm trying to say is it feels so different to take the bull on the last day than it would have on the first, but I wouldn't have this feeling if I didn't put myself through it.
Yeah.
And so you can't, I keep trying to, like, there's this old Chinese proverb, it would be said in Japan all the time. And it went like, you know, you can't get the tiger cub if you don't go into the cave and get it. Like, which is nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yeah.
Kojio, as you know, it's like with nothing ventured, there's nothing gained. If you don't risk it all, you can't come out the other end with an achievement. And the thing is, I was watching the other day, I was watching a video. It was Adam Foss, and it was a Sitka video. Just the other day it came out, and he was hunting bighorn sheep on the top. I think it was negative 25 degrees in deep, deep snow. Look, guys have a hard time doing this with a rifle.
Yeah.
And I just happened to see it, but I saw a post by, maybe it was him or someone else earlier, and it said, show me a guy who's killed a bighorn sheep on like this type of hunt with a bow, and I'll show you that same guy on 20 other hunts where he didn't get one. And I thought about that, and it's true. It's hard enough if you're a Canadian citizen and you can get a sheep tag. It's hard enough to find a full curl ram or whatever the regs are in that area. It's hard enough with a rifle to do this thing. And then Adam like throws a bow hunt on top of it and insists on it with a bow. I mean, he takes what's kind of impossible. Like, I have friends who hunt every year, 20 days for bighorn sheep and up in Canada, and get one every 5 years with a rifle. And now you're going to throw a bow and arrow into the mix. It's kind of like the unlimited tag in Montana. Yeah. It's like there's just these hunts that are so difficult to accomplish. And so you might ask yourself, well, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? It's hard enough with like a rifle, for example. But the thing is, what Adam has tapped into is you can't have the victory of having done it with a bow if you don't push yourself to that level of extreme. And so the reward, the achievement is in direct correlation to the challenge to get to achieve it, right? So the thing is, a lot of people don't care about the achievement, or they don't want to pay the price to get to it.
They want instant gratification. It's kind of the world we live in now, right?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people go through life going, man, I wish I could achieve this, this, or this, but it's too much work or too hard, so I'm going to settle for this. And they always settle. Yeah. Their whole life is settling. What Adam did was, he's like, yeah, I'll go on 15 of these and get one sheep. But that one is going to make up for the 15 I didn't get as one of the most remarkable things pulled off that you can pull off.
It's amazing.
You know?
And probably wouldn't ever, I mean, you need those 15 attempts, right? To then learn all that you need to learn to actually execute.
Man, that's another thing too, is these self-imposed struggles teach me so much more about hunting. If I had tagged a bull out on the first day on that hunt, I'd be like, oh yeah, that hunt was pretty easy.
Yeah.
Great bull, whatever. That hunt, anybody can do it. It was by making a little more challenging for myself that I had to go on a whole nother journey and make it and learn a lot more than
that takes some self-discipline, right? And it sounds like you've learned a lot of that through those mentors in your life, but is that a natural gift that you've been given? Is that why Gritty comes into play as your brand? Because a lot of people do want things to happen quickly, and they're not choosing to suffer, but you seem to want the perspective that suffering brings, because it'll allow you to achieve more in the future on the next time, or to be able to look at that adventure and say, there's lessons learned, but I wouldn't have had that without this discipline of, sticking it out. Or
it's more than one thing.
Okay.
I think it's growth. I'd be lying. Like, I was so happy to shoot a spike or a doe on the first bow hunts I ever went on.
Yeah.
I was so happy to shoot a raghorn bull and then a 5x5 and then a 6. I was so thrilled. You set challenges for yourself based on where you're at in life.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to go do Ironman. First, I'm going to start with like high school track or whatever, and then you progress. And I think what that represents is, set the challenge for yourself that's really difficult for you in life. And once you've achieved that, you kind of crave the next challenge. That's how I am
as well. Yep.
So I'm like, I graduate from challenge to challenge to challenge based on my experience level. I heard Stephen Ranella say, people were hating on him because they're like, you're just trophy hunting on this particular hunt. And, meat eaters all about eating the meat and stuff. And so it's a delicate, they're bringing their audience through him, like trying to kill a giant mule deer buck. Well, he's got to explain why he cares about shooting the oldest buck, because the culture behind the brand. And he has to say, and he says in there, he says something like, if I were to, at this stage in my life, just shoot the first meat deer that came up, I would be done on the first day of the hunt. It's by pursuing the older age class buck that I end up with on a 10 or 12 day hunt, right? You get to a stage where your skill set and your abilities and your knowledge about hunting is so advanced that you have to start imposing like the next level of difficulty on yourself, because it's not hard anymore to just go out and find a deer and take it.
That's true.
It has to be of a certain class, a certain age, a certain look. You're looking over many, many, many deer because you're so skilled that what you would have taken before, you don't take anymore, because you're still out there for experience, for learning, for challenge. So I think it's growth.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you're continually raising the bar on yourself, adding a little more difficulty to your endeavors. Like, whenever I make a film, I want the next film to be even better than the last film.
Yeah.
And I want to learn a few new things with the next creation that I didn't have in the last one. And you can't always do that, especially in a creative process. Someone might write a hit song and their next 3 are good, but they're not like that one. That's how creativity works. I think that's how magic comes together. I might make a great movie that somebody's like, that was really good. I want to beat that. I want to make something that's more special, or more unique, or more compelling. And so I set these bars, but more often than not, the more you set those bars, like Adam Foss, for example, the more you fail, because the bar is getting set pretty high. That's okay. You just keep trying. But man, does it taste good when you actually nail it again. You're like, oh, dude.
Tastes so much better, right? Because you know the experience and the taste of the failure.
Yeah, there's no feeling like it.
Yeah.
Like, it's hard to describe. When I walked up on that bull, there was just an overwhelming feeling of happiness and relief and contentment and gratitude. You can't get that if I'd shot the bull on the first day.
Right.
I wouldn't have felt any of those emotions. It wouldn't have told me about myself. It wouldn't have made me, as it's just, I don't know if I'm
no, it's perfect. I mean, there's much more gratitude and appreciation for all that was experienced. I worry that a lot of people in life don't go after things that way, or that
I think they don't. I honestly,
it's a choice, right?
I think they don't. I think many men in my situation would hire a guide and then lean on that guide and try to shoot a bull, or they would shoot that 330 bull that came out.
Amen.
And roll with it and go, hey, I got a bull.
Yep.
Because they don't want to risk going home with nothing.
Okay.
They don't want to risk that. They'd rather play it safe, get a decent bull, and be good. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Is that all for external validation then? Is that like they're not looking for the internal growth that comes from the process that they could go through, and they really just want the satisfaction of saying, I got it done, look at me?
There's certainly probably some that fall into that category, but it's more like if you've waited 20 years and you want to get a tag and you haven't killed very many bulls, an average bull coming out and standing in front of you, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
You haven't had very many of those experiences, and so you went for it, right? It's a lot different for someone who has maybe shot 10 bulls like that.
I see.
So I'm not saying that.
So for some, that's their shot they should take.
They're happy with it.
Yeah.
They're okay with it.
Yeah.
And based on their experience level in life or where they're at skill set wise or whatever, that represents for them a very cherished experience.
Yeah. I love that, because you're not looking at that saying, hey, this guy doing it this way is wrong.
No.
Because I think the industry can sometimes get caught up in that. Like, this guy did it this way and it's not, but
I mean, I used to be that guy.
Yeah.
20 years ago.
I'm that guy right
yeah,
now, right? Like, I mean, I want to go out and have the experience. I see hunting as like one of the greatest ways to learn lessons in life. I mean, I hear all the stories you're telling right now and this victory in the end, but the failure that came through the journey and everything. And it's like life is just flashing before our eyes, right? That's what it's all about. But you're right. Like, there's stages of progress and maturation in that, and then discipline and growth along the way that, it starts right here, and it's okay. I love that you're that way, because I've experienced both sides of the industry, more so the way you're setting it up, that a lot of people have helped me along the way. They've instructed me, they've mentored me, and they've celebrated those victories along the way with me. I'm trying to do that for my children at the same time, So my hunting's kind of all over the place. And if a big bull comes out the first night and my daughter shoots it, like, this is like a home run for us. Right. This is incredible. And it's her first time, and we're celebrating that. But there's just growth along the way.
Yeah. I think that where I think hunters and just in life, people miss out is when they get to a point where they're on that same hunt, but they have killed quite a few 6x6 bulls. And this is another bull in that category. It's a nice bull. And they're like, I don't know if I'll be able to get one better than this, so I'm going to go for this one. I still got 10 days left, but I don't know if I can. And so I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to take this bull. It's not a bull that his dreams are made of. It's not a bull that they're particularly excited about. It's not a bull that,
But they settle.
But they settle because it's safe. They don't want to gamble.
Yeah.
They don't want to gamble on it all. That's the thing I'm trying to get at.
Okay.
Gamble on it all, dude. Yeah. Like, when you're at that stage, I want to see you grow. I want to see you lose.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to lose a lot until you get to that stage where it's like you finally pulled one off.
Yeah.
And you're like, hell yeah, I did it. Yeah, okay. And you experience that moment, but you cannot experience that moment without the gamble.
Yeah.
I just see people play it safe throughout life in all facets, all walks of life.
Yep.
And I think it's the gamble and betting on yourself where you grow and stretch and learn the most and you taste the greatest victories.
That's cool.
That's the thing that people just be willing to lose it all.
Yeah.
For the chance to win it all. And that is just not common.
Yep.
It's not common. Most people are like when I quit my job, I'm not going to be this, 6-figure income. Like,
you were in the finance.
I've always been sort of a jack of all trades, master of none. So I did IT governance compliance. I did IT change management work. I did revenue assurance. I did Sarbanes-Oxley audits. I did, independent. I did independent consulting for different firms. I did audits for big corporations like Nike. And I got paid well. Yeah. And I got to work kind of the hours I wanted. Mm-hmm. And I got to bill myself out for $200 an hour plus to do pretty easy, white collar stuff.
Yep.
And it was living the high life.
Yeah.
And I went in and was like, what I really want to do is spend more time outdoors. I want to hunt. I want to podcast with and learn from. I want to do interviews with people that are way more knowledgeable than me in certain sectors of life.
Cool.
And I want to learn as much as I can and then challenge myself to become better, whether it's at archery, rifle shooting, whether it's even business, podcasting.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
So I left.
When was this, in 2014 or
2016
16
is when I left. 2015 is when I started.
Okay.
A year into it, I had companies like Mountain Ops that said, hey, if you want to work with us and help us grow Mountain Ops, we'll pay you.
Yeah.
We'll sponsor the show.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how much? And we talked about it, and I talked to other companies, and they're like, and most of all this stuff was companies I had already been working with and was excited about. I'm like, well, okay, let's work this out. And it turned out that I could authentically work with all these different brands and do what I thought was meaningful in this space between podcasting and film and so on. And I quit my job. I went in there and said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to go podcast. And it was a gamble because I had a great job.
Yeah.
I had a really good job. They say that the enemy to greatness is contentment.
Yeah.
And that's where I was. And I knew that quote, by the way. And I was like, I told my wife, I'm like, babe, I'll make half what I make now. What do you think? She's like, do it. It's just money. And she had gone through cancer and just gotten over it. She was on her last couple treatments of chemo and the prognosis looked really good. And she's like, quit your job.
I remember sitting at dinner with you during one of the hunt expos. We went over to, I don't know, one of those meat
those first times we met. Yeah.
And you were telling me the story that your wife has just beat cancer. I think it was at that time. Was she clear at the time in 2015, or was she still going through it?
Her last chemo was like January 2015.
Okay, so like a month later, we were at dinner during that first hunt expo that Mountain Ops exhibited at, and I remember you sharing that, and I was just kind of floored.
I just quit.
You just quit. Just started. She had just done her last round of chemo.
Mm-hmm.
Was she always that way, that supportive of, let's do it? Or was it like, was this life-changing experience with cancer? Like, does that bring about a perspective? It's like, hey, we've got one life to live. Let's go.
I think that it's behind every man that's achieved his dreams, often I feel like I think behind that is a woman who helps that man get there.
Oh yeah.
That's why when I look at a really successful man or a man I kind of want to emulate or admire, I also look at the wife because it's so difficult to get there without that person. Look, all I can speak to is my own experience. And there is no question that my wife is like a massive source of my self-worth, even my confidence.
Yeah.
And she builds me up and makes me feel like the most amazing dude in the world. And so
that's awesome.
When we were dating, I'm like, I want to make her laugh, smile, feel protected, all those kind of things that, provide. We're in college. I got nothing. I'm a college kid with no money.
Yeah.
She's marrying potential because I'm not there, And while we're dating, she's beautiful. She could date and marry like lots of guys. Like she's a catch. And so my job is to try to get her to marry me. based on what I might be able to do, what I might become. She's got the package right now. She's got the beauty and all the pieces, to attract many men. And with that comes in me like this little bit of like, I got to get the degree. I got to get the job. Yourself. I got to prove to this woman, I want her to love me and adore me and be proud of me. And she's that driving force for that. Like she is behind me as that woman and my intense desire to make her happy.
Yeah.
And then in her is like this faith in me. And I remember, I'm getting my degree. I'm working on it. I'm nobody. She's like, said yes, she'll marry me. We're engaged. And she says to me one day, I mean, I'm in love. But she goes, I want you to know that I don't care if we have to sell pencils on the sidewalk together to make it by. Like, you're my man, And it sounds dumb. It sounds cheesy. But it meant a lot to me that what she was banking on, I'm sure she didn't want to be in poverty.
Right.
But that, I don't know, it gave me like a feeling of so much like comfort, I guess, for lack of a better word. And just like, I knew she was with me and she was with me for the right reasons and for the long haul, no matter what. She's committed. Yeah. She had made her choice and she wasn't gonna ever.
Amazing confidence that would instill in you, right? In the relationship for the long haul.
And so as things came up and I'm like, hey, I want to go be a podcaster. She's like, again, like, we're going to make half the money we were before.
Yeah.
She's like, well, I'll probably have to sell the house. Can't afford the house and this adventure. We're going to have to move. She's like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I believe in you.
It's amazing.
And I have a lot of different people I've known, friends and stuff, whose spouses couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And so it didn't give them the freedom, in that relationship to take that chance or roll that dice. They played it safe.
Yeah.
And again, they didn't do the gamble. And they still have great lives and they've, there's more than one way to go through it. But I look at this and I'm like, man, rolling the dice on it all. And then the richness of my life for all the things I've been able to do, relationships, connections, meaning and purpose. It's just been remarkable. It's been amazing. So I just look at the decision to just throw it all in. And it was her that was right there with me. Yeah, let's do this. And let's just roll the dice and who cares?
It's amazing. And we can sell pencils if we need to.
Yeah.
Right?
And so that to me was like, I don't know. I feel like she definitely liberated me and made it all possible. And then when we did struggle and we did have times where I wasn't making the income that I used to, and, we went through bumpy times over the last decade. There was highs and lows, but man, she's right there beside me the whole way.
It's amazing.
And so have my parents, so have my siblings, so have close friends, and they've all played a role too.
Yeah. I was just going to ask about your parents because I've met them. They kind of that same way. Did they showed you that example as a couple growing up, and didn't you?
Yeah.
You had quite the childhood and upbringing as well, where
I'm the oldest of 8 kids.
Okay.
And I had really young parents. They got pregnant with me when they were 16.
Okay.
So their kids having kids.
Yeah.
And, so I come along and a couple more siblings, like my 2 sisters. And I'm being raised, what was I like? I think when I was 4 years old, my mom was 20.
Yeah.
21. So by the time I was in high school, my mom was like 32 when I was 16, So I was raised by 33,
by
really young parents. Both my mom and dad are the same age. And I think that changes you, because my parents drug us everywhere. And they're young, vigorous, hardworking, taking chances, and they were poor. I mean, poor. It takes generations to build wealth.
It does.
You know, the amount of money I have at 50 is a lot different than when I was 20.
Yeah.
And so the kids experience, I had parents who, my dad was a truck driver at 17, 18, making basic wages, out of driving truck a lot. And so I feel like those young parents who were tough and didn't put up with anything, they're like, dude, you're chopping wood, you're doing the chores, and they were just carving out a living.
Everyone's pulling their weight, right?
And they were young and they had no patience for BS. I mean, they're not far from being kids themselves, and they could see it a mile away, and I got a lot of beatings from my dad. Like, my dad was quite the, he handed those out pretty handily. Some deserved a lot, not, it's just, that's what happens when you have a 24-year-old dad. But I would say they instilled in me a work ethic. They worked us and worked us and worked us. I mean, my parents were always rebuilding, remodeling, putting up a shop, a barn, a garage, new roads, whatever. They're just building, working. It was like our joke. I was like, all my parents do is work, and they just make us work. That was my whole childhood. It's like, we never vacationed. We never went anywhere. It was always just work. And that was instilled in me at a young age. And so I'm not afraid of work at all.
Yeah.
Like that movie I did the other day with Brady, it was like, it's just work. I've been saying that since I was a little kid. It's just work. So my parents said, it's just work. It's a Saturday. The whole Saturday is spent shoveling rock. And they're like, chopping wood. It's like, it's just work.
Well, that's where I feel like
Never
all of these things that you're doing now, it's paying off. That's where this discipline and this grit comes from, right? Is because it started at an early age, and you're okay doing that because that's what you knew, that's what you were raised to do. Where maybe a lot are not being raised that way, and so day one, I'm going to do that because if I don't, it means more work.
Well, and it wasn't just that they worked us all the time. There was a lot of accountability if you didn't do what you were supposed to. If it was my job to feed the horses and take out the trash and bring in the wood and light the fire in the morning before I went to school, if it was my job to do all that and I didn't do it, there was a beating coming. There was a grounding coming. You were in trouble. And so we just did the work. I never wanted, the consequence. So I just did the work. And I think a lot of parents today are like, look, my kids haven't had to do that kind of stuff because life doesn't necessitate it. So it's been a little harder. We've been a little more well off. We didn't grow up on kind of a farmy area, and we didn't have to, like, my kids didn't, they had older parents that had money, So you hear it all the time. You get wealthier each generation. How do you raise the kids that have it all? The same way you raise the kids that had nothing. There's certainly the gauntlet of life as a child and trying to grow up in a home without hardly any money. That hits you. Now, one thing I realized at a young age was that money had no impact on happiness, like none. It has, in the United States, it has no impact. If you're not happy now, where you are with the money you have now, you're not going to be happy when you have a whole bunch of money.
How did you learn that at a young age?
I grew up in a trailer. We had a trailer, a little like 70s nomad trailer. Like, you're talking a 20-footer.
Okay.
And
with how many kids?
Like 4 or 5 kids.
Wow.
We lived in a tent for probably 6 months. In my dad's Volkswagen van, he would drive to work. He worked the graveyard shift. The tent was leaking so bad that we would just get inside the van and started sleeping in it instead.
While he
it was just a green wall tent, like cotton tent. In Oregon, was raining. They had taken all their money as teenagers and bought a big giant 5-acre lot in the woods. But they didn't have the equipment to put a road in the house, and it was all down the road. So they saved up cash, bought this place. Well, now they have this land, so they just camped on it in tents. And then the tents were miserable in Oregon. It can rain, and it was leaking and cold. And I remember my mom had enough, and we all climbed in the van, and we'd sleep in the van at night. And then my dad would have to drive to work, so he would just drive in the van to the graveyard shift down at Savi's Island in Portland, park in the parking lot, and go to work.
You guys would be sleeping.
And we just slept in the parking lot. And the Volkswagen van had some beds that would roll out, and I slept right behind the 2 bucket seats in the front, which I always wanted because the heat blows right there between the 2 seats. And so I would lay there, and and then when he drove to work, the heater would kick on, and you'd be cozy and warm. And then throughout the night, it would get a little colder. And then he'd start up the car as the sun was coming up and drive back. And then we would get up and walk to the school bus down the long gravel road and go to school.
Where would you shower and clean up and all that? Or did that just not exist?
Didn't really happen. I don't know. We had we were always there was no showering. I didn't even think about it.
So it didn't dawn on you. It wasn't like hey, we're going to school. No,
didn't even cross.
You didn't know this was
not
a bad
usual.
Not usual.
Not really.
Maybe not bad, but just different.
I thought it was cool, dude.
That's cool.
I thought it was cool. I just loved playing outside. So
it was an adventure.
All we did was play outside all the time. It was an adventure. I didn't care. It was way better than living in the city. We had this little house in the city in Portland for a while, and then we moved out into the sticks. So for me,
you understood the difference.
In first grade, that was first grade for me.
Okay.
Walk to the school bus, go there, live in the van, and then they got the trailer, which was a step up, and they excavated all that land. I have all these pictures and stuff from that time period. And then we got a double wide mobile home that got delivered, and I remember that going up, and it was pretty exciting. And then we moved into the double wide. And so growing up under those circumstances, we had a lot of land because my parents bought 5 acres. Her sister, my mom's sisters and their husbands all bought 5 acres. So there was 5, all my mom, it's a commune of families out there. All the acreage was connected together.
Wow.
So it ended up being 25 acres plus all the neighboring lands of 20, 30 acres. So we had hundreds of acres that nobody touched. We were trespassing, but we didn't really know it. We'd hit the Abernathy Creek and go here and play here and do that. And dude, the world was our oyster.
That is awesome.
And so we built tree houses and played and rode bikes. And
did you live in a tree house for a period of time? Was I misunderstanding this, or was there a tree house that you guys lived in?
Suzanne and I built a tree house that we lived in for 10 years.
Right at the beginning of your marriage?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
On that same property?
Yeah. Yeah. I've got pictures. It's wild. I'll tell you about that.
Okay.
But we lived in the mobile home, and I would have friends that had really nice houses, really nice cars, a lot of money. They had better clothes. They had it all. And they would ask to come and hang out at our house. And I'm like, sure. I don't really care. I'm first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, all through elementary school. And they would come over and they would love it at our house. They would love it at our poverty-stricken house in our junky cars out on all this acreage. We'd catch frogs. We'd play in the pond. We would have tree forts and ride bikes. And it was all this country, kind of like Duck Dynasty level, just land. We didn't really have a nice house or anything else, or nice toys or possessions. And what I realized was they were all envious of my life. And they were envious of my parents' love for each other. My parents were they adore each other. And even to this day, they're just like that.
Lovebirds, huh?
And so they're also my mom is just a firebrand. And so, they just made things fun.
Yeah.
There was adventure all the time. And we were kicked out. My mom's like, get out of the house. I don't want to see you. Leave. This trailer's too small. So it was We were outside.
Go explore.
Figure it
Awesome.
out. And there was no TV. There was no video games. There was none of that. So it just informed, it showed me that, and I had a blast with cousins and friends and stuff. And I realized that I didn't need money to do any of this stuff. All these adventures and all this stuff we did on very little money. As I got older even, I could see people who would fall into this. I'll be happy when.
Yeah.
I'll be happy when I get my first car. I'll be happy when, when I get a credit card and I can do this. I'll be happy when I get this job and I can finally, get this car and I can finally like buy season tickets to go see this game. Like it's always this, I'll be happy when. And I looked around, I'm like, wait a minute, if you're not happy now, I don't think buying that thing is going to change it. I also, when I was a missionary in Japan, I would go door to door and we would hit the parks and I would share the gospel of Jesus Christ with anyone who would listen.
Right.
And part of my mission was that, and the other part was a lot of service. We taught English 5 days a week. It was free. It was there to serve the Japanese people and the public. It was a service. And I would teach English.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved it. I love the Japanese people and their culture. And I would teach. Some of the happiest people that I would come across were the people that had the least amount of money. And the most unhappy people, I swear, that I came across in Japan were the most elite, the most rich, and the most wealthy. So unhappy. And I saw, again, another like parallel where people were super happy who were poverty stricken and people who were super sad and depressed and a mess who had tons of money. And I could just see these correlations and going, wait a minute. Then I read this book one time and they were talking about like the hierarchy of needs for human beings. And they were like basically talking about how little we need.
Yeah.
Food, water, shelter, some basics, right? And when those needs are met, which in America, almost everyone has it all.
Yep.
You're not in danger of starving to death at all. That's just not a risk here. Even if you live on the street, there's just very little risk. So, well, gosh. So I don't know, at some point, Trevor, I just realized that money's not the thing. Status, wealth, and that's not it. That's not where peace, joy, and all that stuff comes from. And I suppose too, the other part was, since I was a little kid, I grew up LDS like you.
Yep.
And since I was a little kid, I always believed in God.
Yeah.
And always have. So I feel like, okay, well, I just think that I'm here for a reason.
Yeah.
And that there is a purpose in life to make a difference. I have a duty to try to be as morally responsible as I can, the best version of myself, and I'll fail because I'm human. But there's purpose in that. There's meaning in that. And I started to realize, okay, if I pursue being honest, being hardworking, making a difference, adding value, if I can be a better version of myself all the time or try to make a difference in the world, there's a lot of peace that comes from that. And things like money, things like success, status, all that will come just by default, more or less. And so I always say on my own podcast, I'm rich in lifestyle. There's few men in the planet that have been able to go and do a lot of the things I've been able to do and experiences. I'm rich in health. I'm not very wealthy when it comes to the dollar bills in the bank account, despite what some people think. A lot of people look at what I do and they're like, oh, he must be loaded. I'm really blue collar.
Yeah.
Now, I think, like Dave Ramsey says, or even Gary Vee,
yeah,
I think I'm moving in a direction where 5 or 10 years from now, I'll have more wealth than I would have had I stuck with the old career.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But there was a lot of making very little money for a long time. But it's never been about that. I was going over some stuff business-wise the other day and visiting with my parents, and my mom goes, well, you're going to be super wealthy right about the time you're kind of old.
Thanks, Mom.
And she's like, you know what's great about that? Your kids are going to inherit some great stuff, but you're really not going to get to have it. And I'm like, you know what, though? It doesn't matter. Tell me anything that I wanted to do that I wasn't able to do on a $70,000, $80,000 a year income.
Yeah.
Look where I've been, what I got to do, what I like, shoe leather and bootstrapped myself into. And I'm not really motivated by money. Never have been. I think it's overrated. I'm motivated by meaning.
Yeah.
And if you can focus there, man, I think that the other stuff just comes naturally out of it.
I 100% agree. Our core value at Mountain Ops for this month, every December, we focus on the core value of joy. And there's a quote by Russell M. Nelson that says that the joy we feel in life has very little to do with the circumstances of our life and everything to do with the focus of our life. So focusing on meaning in life. And I think you not focusing on the transaction or the money allows you to focus on the relationships that you're about, and the journey and the experience and the adventure and this and that. Because if it was all about this transaction, that would occupy your time. And that's why so many people that are wealthy in our worldly terms are unhappy, right? Because they're sacrificing their time for that. And time is the most precious thing we have.
It's so easy to get wrapped up into that. We're all afraid. Like, being human is to be afraid of things.
Yeah.
We all carry like a certain level of negative emotion and fear. And money, status, and wealth protects you, gives you protection against, the wolf at the door. Having a little bit of money, it's security. You do personality tests, and I test off the scale on my desire for freedom. And I really security is not something I prioritize at all. So if it becomes down to like safety or adventure, if it comes down to safety or freedom, I would rather be poor. I would rather be poor and living outside in a tent, but free.
Yeah.
It's just how I'm wired.
Do you have a fear of that, not being able to be free and do
Yes.
Okay.
That is my
some fear is security.
Correct.
You fear the lack of freedom.
I am so afraid of lack of freedom.
And what does that fear feel like?
With partnerships, I'm like,
I gotta bind myself to this, and
I don't want to sign an agreement where I'm like committed to things. I'm like, I just leave me alone. If I sell some stuff, I sell it. If I don't, I don't. That's why I like commission codes. That's why my whole business is mostly built around that freedom, because I'm afraid, first of all, I don't want to disappoint other people.
Yeah.
Because I do care about keeping my word.
Yeah.
So I don't want to commit, even if I mean well. I don't want to commit and then under-deliver and not deliver. So I'd rather say, look, if I am able to sell a whole bunch of sweatshirts or supplements or things that I truly like to use, then you pay me a percentage. I'm free. The other thing is, it's like a job. I couldn't just leave for 3 weeks and go on a whim to some hunt. I couldn't go on this hunt I just did. It was like 21 days total I spent on the mountain for that hunt. Like, who can do that in the old job I had when I was a consultant and did all this work? I couldn't do that, but I had way more security. The check came in every month. I was on salary. I had my paid vacation days. I had it all. But I was much more afraid of being told, no, you can't go on that hunt and not having the freedom to do it than I was like worried about not having money.
Yeah.
And so over the years, the Second Amendment and freedom of speech, the First, Second Amendment are things that really, really, I'm sensitive over.
Yeah.
Overly sensitive. If I sniff censorship, if I sniff gun control, it sets me off because I feel like that's the freedom I'm talking about. Like the idea, like during COVID, I would much rather die of COVID than be forced to wear a mask.
Yeah.
Like if I have to choose between the risk of illness and freedom, I'm okay with the risk of illness. Let me take my risk. It's like, nobody should be jumping out of perfectly good airplanes. Right? Like it does, like, why? And yet people do it for fun.
Yeah.
Why should anybody go into this wilderness where grizzly bears have been known to eat people and go with a bow and arrow and just hunt? Like they should put a rule in place. Nobody can do that because it's too dangerous. And I'm the opposite where I'm like, yeah, I think it's stupid to do some Andy Stump jump and go off of this building and like in a squirrel suit and fly. I don't think the government or anyone should tell you no, though.
Yeah.
I just, as a man, I want to be free to choose to risk my own life. If I want to free climb a cliff that's 200 feet up, I don't want some rule to say, or someone to come in and say, regulate that and say, no, you can't do that because it's too dangerous. I know it's dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why I want to do it. And if I die, I die. That's the whole point. Like there's something special, and it sounds funny to some, but there is something special about those risks.
Yeah.
That push you as a man, that lets you like grow and you might die.
Yeah.
There's certain things you do in life that you might die, and people will write into me and go, dude, that was so dumb. Why did you floated down this river and you crossed this thing and I didn't see a life jacket. And it's like, you're right. Was that risky? Yeah. Could I have died? Yes. That's why I'm doing it. There's like a part of that. And it's like, don't be reckless.
Right.
But that's what it means to be a man, Trevor, is to go out and do some things that are dangerous and see if you can do it.
Yeah.
We've used to do that. We used to value that as a society, as human beings. I think Native American Indians, it's like, go out and kill that bear with a spear and don't come back until you're done.
Yeah.
And there's like, why? There is value in risking your life or doing something dangerous and then surviving it. And when you start to insulate yourself as a man from all of those things, you stop living, you stop growing, you stop, So for me, it goes like, I just am naturally inclined to be more focused on freedom. And I think happiness comes from that much more than it comes from security. And that's what I was saying earlier, like people cling to the security and so they never get to experience what's out there.
Yeah.
And had I clung to security on the elk hunt, I would have just shot a pretty nice bull and come home and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
But I rolled the dice and I almost came home with no bull at all. And, but the one I got feels so special because of it. And it was the gamble, it was the risk. It was taking the chance and being okay with failure. And so freedom versus security, I think security is overrated. And I think money represents security in a lot of ways. So
has your wife had the same mentality? She's such a supporter of you and what you've done, and you lived in a treehouse for first 10 years of marriage.
Yeah.
There's some freedom there. Let's go live up in the trees. Is that her mentality as well, or is she kind of adapted to it with you?
She's definitely more of a risk taker so women they're more nesters. They're much more conservative. Rightly so. I mean, they bear children. They have to protect them, I think evolutionarily, that makes sense, right? So women, I think, are naturally more inclined to lean towards safety than freedom. You know, you see a lot of women might settle for a man they're not really in love with, but he brings a lot of security to the table, and so they're like, well, I'll go along with this, you know. But Suzanne is not necessarily. She's pretty wired for. She's definitely more worried than I am when we take risks. She definitely worries more, which I think is more of a female trait. You know, as much as people want to pretend men and women are the same, we're not. But I think she also has a tremendous faith in me and what I'll do and that I'll come through. And she just believes in. She decides that she's going to override her fear with trust.
Cool.
And so when I came to her, I'm always full of crazy ideas. And I said, you know, I owned a construction company. We'd been roofing, building houses. We'd buy oversized lots, subdivided, my brother-in-law and my cousin Ben. And I was going to college, got my degree, had my other job, but I was real estate investing big time, buying houses and buying lots and selling them and building. And I did roofing and siding for, you know, almost a decade. And so we would do all these, like, try to roof like a few houses a month, get some siding jobs. We had a crew of like 8 guys, and paid really well. You know, I was making 6 figures on that, plus the other IT job. And it was too much. I couldn't hold it all in the air. But during that time, I was buying lots, and I was trying to take every penny I made from both jobs and invest it into real estate. Because, dude, I wanted to be retired by the time I was 30. I wanted to own like 20 like apartments or houses or whatever, and just collect rent and run all over the world. So I was like committed, and I was on a roll. I was doing great. During that time, I was like, I don't want a house payment. It gets in the way of, I could have 2 more buildings that I could be working on with the same money that I put into the house. So, but I needed a place to live. And
your parents had a nice tree.
They had all this acreage. They had like 15 acres, and they had their own house. But I'm like, dude, there's all this land out here. I was trying to be creative, and I was watching Home and Garden TV, HGTV, and they had this treehouse special, and it was like an hour long, and it was 100 tree houses. And they just walked through all these tree houses, and I was like mesmerized. I'm like, dude, I could build that. I could totally build that. And I'm just watching each house pop up, and I'm like, oh, and my creativity, my ideas started to come through. I started thinking Star Wars, Swiss Family Robinson, like Ewoks. And I'm like, okay, like this would be cool. A rope bridge. It just took over.
That's awesome.
And I obsessed over it. So I bought a few books at the library or at the bookstore on how to build a treehouse. And I started reading. I didn't tell Suzanne any of this. And then it just went on and on and on. And then I got these ideas, and I looked at the legality of it and building permits and all this kind of stuff. And I was like,
could you just build, or did you have to get permits for something like that?
Both. There were rules. Yeah. And so we went through that process. In the end, we did. I also had all these building supplies, like left over, hanging out, like from jobs and houses that we built, and a few 2x4s, sheetrock, plywood, roofing, siding materials. So we collected it, and we had random stuff. And I'm like, let's build a cheap tree house with all these supplies, and we'll live there for a while, save money. And so I built it. I built it over the course of, I don't know, a summer.
And Suzanne just like, yep.
I went to her and I said, hey, I want to build a treehouse. She's like, she had a degree in interior design and could do computer-aided drafting, a bunch of CAD work. So, and she has really good space planning and all that. So I'm like, this is my idea. These trees right here, I need a bridge, I need a deck, I need this, da-da-da. And she's like, she started drawing it up, came up with a cool design, cheap, but efficient. Double French doors, big deck, like a rope bridge, like all this stuff.
Oh, cool.
And I'm like, okay. So I start building it. The neighbors think we're crazy.
Yeah.
You know, everyone thinks we're crazy. And I'm like, no, it's going to be badass. And then our neighbor, who is an engineer, I got in touch with him. We became close friends, and he helped me work on it. And I built a friggin' treehouse.
Wow.
Which kicked off our friendship with our neighbors like super well, because it was insane. It was just like
everyone's curious.
Yeah, and to this day, they are just treasured people in my life.
Awesome.
And the bridge did not turn out as originally planned. It was more of a death trap. It would like, you know,
you have a swing.
Yeah, it was more of a swing.
What you didn't expect it.
And you could slide to the middle in the ice. And so I ended up putting in a steel truss bridge, aluminum really, that our neighbor built for us. And it just spanned the distance from the hillside to the tree. And
that's where you enter the tree.
Yeah, so it was built on a steep hillside, and so the treehouse was here, and so I didn't want to have my pregnant wife climb a ladder or a staircase or anything like that. I wanted it to be sort of Swiss Family Robinson, so you could park here and you just walk straight out.
Wow,
and then you were at level.
That's amazing.
And so it ended up being 50-foot span to get to the house from the hillside. I did a cement patio up there.
Yeah.
And then, you know, then you could just walk across to the house. And it was built on stilts and in 4 trees, and had a like a 10 by 24-foot deck on the front.
Wow.
Double French doors would open, and you could just see the Oregon forest. And
there's your freedom right there.
Yeah,
right? Like up in the trees.
And it, you know, there was no house payment. It's just on my parents' property.
Amazing.
And we lived there for years.
And had children there. And
I remember the first night we spent the night there, you know, my wife and I, and it was still under construction, but we were laying there on the deck, and we're in our 20s, and I'm looking up at the stars, and I'm like, man, I never want to forget how this feels.
Yeah.
This is our house. I mean, we built it. It's little, but look how cool this is. And dude, it was idyllic. It was, you know, who gets to build a treehouse and live at the treetops?
It's amazing.
You know? And it was really high because it was built on a steep hill. And you're supposed to build the treehouse lower. I wanted it high, dude.
You're seeking the freedom, man. Like
the adventure. And so it had issues later that I had to resolve because I didn't quite follow the engineering rules. But over the years, yeah, we lived there for almost 10 years.
Wow. Is it still there?
It just got taken down. My parents sold the land a long time ago and moved to Utah. When they did that, that couple owned it for a long time, but you know, it's like anything. It requires maintenance, and you have to decide, you know, if you're going to put the time in. And they've basically converted it, I think, just into like a deck, a big giant deck that's just out, and you bridge the view across, and it's just a big party kind of space, you know.
That's amazing.
Which is fine if you, because you got a roof inside, and the electricity was a little bootleg. So was some of the plumbing. No, we did it. We did it the right way, but not all of it would have followed code, you know. But yeah, it was special.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I don't know anyone else that can tell that same story. So it's awesome. You mentioned something earlier about you know, earlier on in life, just having a relationship with God, trust in God, a belief in God. How has that relationship brought you the freedom you're looking for in life? Because there's, you know, you're taking risks. You're taking the risk for freedom, and how has that allowed that to occur? What's that relationship been to you?
There's so many roads you can go down in life, you know. There are things you're called to do.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like intrinsically I have almost a calling, you know, a role to fulfill. And I think when you pursue meaning combined with like, and that comes from your passions too, that ultimately you're sort of doing what God created you to do.
Yeah.
And you can look at like an Einstein or a Michael Jordan or something. Some of these people who were just born to do what they did, you know, almost destined in a way. And I can picture a Michael Jordan, for example, who decided he'd just eat the McDonald's, not work that hard, and never become the legend.
Yeah.
I don't think that's why the man was put here.
Yeah.
He was here to become the legend.
Yeah.
And how many people could have been the Michael Jordan but never found out because they didn't fulfill that passion and they didn't pursue that meaning.
Yeah.
I feel like God has a plan for me and it's different than it is for others because he made me for me to do certain things.
Yeah.
So if I spend 100 days outside in the mountains and film some stuff and produce it and share it, I don't know how to describe it, Trevor. I feel like that's where I'm supposed to be. There's a deep sense of rightness with it.
Yeah.
I sort of go by gut on that stuff.
That's awesome.
I go by the instinct. And so I spend my time up there and I do the things and I produce the shows. I remember years ago when I was a missionary, I listened to this fella, George Durant, talk, and he said, is it okay, if you're trying to serve God, is it okay to have a cabin up at the lake and to go fishing all the time and to have horses and to be gone often? And he's like, yeah, because we need those guys to be young men leaders, And I remember thinking about that going, yeah, I think that we have gifts and talents and our role in life is to maximize those to the best we can. That means rolling the dice. That means pushing yourself to ever be better. It means embracing that. And for others, it's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Be a doctor, a neurosurgeon, some kind of therapist, or maybe for you, it's a teacher, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know it. I feel like you know it. You feel it inside. That's where I belong. That's what I should do. That's where I feel fulfillment.
Yep.
And when you do it in a way where you're trying to make a difference, a positive difference, it all kind of falls into place.
It's so cool.
I think Jocko Willink was supposed to be in the Navy SEALs, kill a bunch of dudes, come back, do his podcast, inspire me, help me take extreme ownership, right? Like Cameron Haynes, he goes out, lifts, and he runs and he shoots. And there is something about that has inspired tens of thousands of men, probably even more, to push themselves even as they get older. Do things that they thought, oh, I can't do that. But then this 50-whatever-year-old is out there running a marathon a day. It just like paradigm shift. Okay, I have more I can do.
You're inspiring me through this. There's a lot that I can't wait to re-listen to this because just the risks in life, the rewards in life, and the freedom that comes. You may have just answered this last question that I want to ask. I'll end on this. It's what I've been ending all these podcasts on, but I think you just kind of gave some of the answer to it. But as a conqueror in life, when all is said and done, how will you measure your life?
It's interesting. I don't take myself too seriously. As much as people are inspired by some of the things I've done or said or the work I've done, I have a body of work of films and adventures and content and 1,000 episodes, 900 podcast episodes where I've tried to impart some knowledge about things. If I died tomorrow, there are people that are like, man, that's a bummer. And then a month, 2 months, a year from now, they'd move on with their lives. They have other things. People don't think about any of us as much as we think they do. And I think that's a healthy attitude to have. People don't think about me that much. They got kids to drop off and pick up from school, and they have jobs and bills to pay, and they watch a film and they see a podcast and they're like, I like that guy. I really enjoy. That was meaningful. I'm going to grow because of something I saw there. It inspires me. But at the end of the day, they all have their own lives. And so, it's fleeting. I know some people that I really, really liked following. They passed away. You almost forget about them. There's new people and new things. And that can be really disturbing for some people.
Yeah.
Because I think we want to have this sort of self-importance. We're so meaningful. We're so this and that. To me, Trevor, I'm not here to impress people. I'm here to serve God, try to like do my best. I'm totally imperfect vessel. Okay. But I'm here for trying to be what God maybe wants out of me.
Yeah.
And for my kids, my wife, those things are the most important. And everything else is just like icing on the cake. It's adventures, it's fun, zest for life. I want to keep that forever. But I'm not really too caught up in whether I've done it all right, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not too caught up in my own self-importance. I'm really simple in that I just am really secure in the paths that I'm on. Like I'm supposed to be there. And I don't know.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that answers your question.
It's a really good answer. And to be secure in your own skin, to be okay with who you are, and to be on, this path that God wants you to be on, to become what he wants you to be, for yourself more than anything, your relationship with him, and for your wife and your children. I mean, there's nothing more important. But I think that's why people are drawn to you and they love and appreciate you. There's a humility about you that it's not about you. It's not about being important to in the eyes of others. You're just here to do and be who you're supposed to be and do.
I don't understand. Like, well, I think you can see ego get in people's way. I remember years ago, one of the first books that I covered in the podcast was Ego is the Enemy.
Yeah.
Before that, I had read Mere Christianity at least 20 times on my way to work. And when I worked downtown, I ride a bike every day. I listened to Mere Christianity over and over and over and over again. I don't know why. Something about that book and C.S. Lewis and how he wrote it just resonated with me. And it's short. It's a skinny little book. There's a section on pride, and I probably have read it hundreds of times. And he talks about being the big noise at the party and how ego and pride, how it impacts your life. And I think I really embraced that, the idea of humility. And when Suzanne went through cancer, the biggest thing that I learned was in my hardest moments, when things are the most difficult, the best thing for me is to focus on thankfulness and gratitude. In the darkest, when I could really focus on all the things I don't have and I'm not getting and aren't going my way, when I switch that around and go, you know what, I'm grateful for the ride. I thank you for this obstacle. Thank you for the struggle. Thank you for the ride so far. Thank you for the beautiful wilderness I've been part of. If some horrific tragedy comes my way, my goal is to focus on how thankful I am for everything, even the hard stuff. And for some reason that I don't quite get, but I just know is true, when you focus on gratitude, gratitude and humility are intertwined.
Yeah.
You can't have gratitude and not have humility.
Yeah.
And because when you're thankful to something.
Yeah.
And that means you're willing to admit that there's something greater than you. And so I don't know. I just think reading that, learning about pride, learning how to be grateful, that has really saved and look, being in the public eye and having people write things like, hey, I love you, this is great. Those were things I didn't want to ever lose, like go to my head or anything. I made a concerted effort to try to keep that in perspective. And popularity is fickle.
Yeah.
Fame is fickle. And so you never want to fix yourself to that boat. Yeah. So anyway.
Amazing, man. I would just say, in the spirit of gratitude, ending with that is like, I'm very grateful for you. Grateful for the partnership, the friendship, grateful for the time here today. And I'm just grateful for your story and your willingness to share it, because it's definitely an inspiration, and appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Appreciate being here, and you guys always supporting Gritty.
Yeah.
Love it.
Go check Gritty out if you haven't already. Thanks, guys.